partner universities, Mizoram University and Mahatma Gandhi University, Motihari, Bihar, the partner universities in Government of India's program Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat, decided that we will celebrate this on the eve of the state formation day of Mizoram. And today, before we start this program, on behalf of the team, on my own behalf, and on behalf of the panelists, the guests, participants, I heartily welcome all of you and also extend warm greetings to the people of Mizoram here and everywhere in the world, the happy Mizoram Day that is tomorrow. Today, this meeting is in line with our program under Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat and the partner universities, Mizoram University Aizawl and Mahatma Gandhi Central University Motihari, Bihar. We are organizing this program today. We have Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor K.R.S. Sambasiva Rao of Mizoram University as the chief guest. Professor Rao is in another program outside, so he told the moment he is able to join, he would join us. Our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Professor J.K. Patnaik is also our guest of honor. We have two distinguished speakers, Professor Lalin Tulwanga, Dean School of Social Sciences, Mizoram University, as the first speaker will talk about formation of Mizoram and beyond. And next guest speaker is Professor Margaret Pachau, Professor of English, Mizoram University, will talk about Mizoram, the cultural dynamics. I'm happy to announce that our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Jagdish K. Patnaik, has just joined. On behalf of both the teams, I welcome Professor Jagdish K. Patnaik, our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, who is the guest of honor today. So, without having much introduction, I would just like to speak one sentence that Mizoram, thousands of years of history and heritage, hundreds of years of culture, struggle for 20 years, 35 years of existence as a state of Indian Union, celebrating Mizoram Day tomorrow. And we are here to celebrate along with our partner university, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Bihar. So again, on behalf of Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat team, I welcome Honorable Pro VC Professor J.K. Patnaik, our esteemed speakers, Professor Lalin Tulwanga, Professor Margaret Pachau, both the universities teams, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat teams, colleagues, research scholars, students, participants all around. Now I request Professor Jagdish K. Patnaik, today's guest of honor, to speak a few words. Sir, please.
Thank you, Professor Pathi. Actually, I'm very happy that our university is celebrating the Mizoram Day on the eve of this 35th anniversary of state formation of Mizoram. As Professor Pathi has already indicated that a struggle of 20 years. A system was, different. So it is a little bit, handled by somebody. Anyway, so this the state of Mizoram, which came into being way back in 1987 as a part of the 53rd Amendment, was a result of the hard work and the efforts undertaken by the forefathers, our forefathers, I would say. It is our fathers, if not forefathers, who were determined and also who were also insistent that for the people of Mizoram, there should be separate identity and separate political entity as a part of Indian Union. The struggle, the history of the struggle is really um, fresh in the minds of the people. Even the younger generation who have had a little bit of exposure to the hardship that the Mizo people underwent, in order to have a special identity for themselves into a political entity. Um, that actually every year all of us should remember. When I say all of us, I also include myself. I'm a half Mizo, you know, all of you, that I have been here for the last nearly 20 years. And I know the difficulties, the hardship that the people of Mizoram have to undergo. And being a student of political science and having worked on the political process of Mizoram, I know how Mizoram became a separate state, and the evolution of the state has been very systematic though, but without the efforts of the founding fathers, it would not have been possible to have a separate statehood. Uh, I don't want to speak much because there are two distinguished speakers, Madam Margaret Pachau and our Dean, Professor Lalin Tuanga. They will definitely speak about it. But one thing just I want to underscore is that the process of state formation is realized not overnight. And it happens as a consequence of the resultant of several factors. And everybody will not get a statehood. Not every community would have a separate state, unless otherwise it qualifies to have certain parameters. Why I'm telling this is very small community of 10, 20, 30, 40, 80,000 people, if they think of having a separate state, they can have a separate state if there would be that amount of political clout. But by the time Mizoram got into a separate hood, the population was 2 lakhs, and which became 4 lakhs, then 8 lakhs, in a span of 35 years. Now it is around 12, 13 lakhs, because still the figures are not very clear. So population is very important parameter of a state in terms of an independent state as well as a state of the federation. Second thing is a language. And when you talk about language, Mizo language is still in the process of evolution. Even today, I would say, my illustrious colleagues will definitely agree with me that the language is still in the process of evolution, and it is a big challenge for our intellectual community to have got incorporated into the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. I do not know to what extent the efforts would be successful in a span of 5 years, 7 years, something like that. But it has to happen unless you have got that identity in getting incorporated in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. It is, I would not say that the process is complete. Next is ethnicity, which Mizo community have got a separate ethnic identity. And there are so many things, and these would contribute to the formation of the state. But what is the purpose of having a separate state? Because state is an instrument of development. And interestingly, Mizoram has made rapid strides in a span of 30 plus years. And where are now? I remember in 2004, when I came over here, the economic condition of the people and the level of development that we witness today has been, tremendous. And because this is the people of Mizoram are hardworking, because the people are, in their own way, contributing to the development of the state. There is no doubt about the fact that Mizoram is still dependent on the resources from the center, the central assistance. But I look forward to a day, certainly in the near future, when the political leaders of Mizoram become much more dynamic and focused for elevating the conditions of the people, and also take advantage of the resources available in the state of Mizoram. It would not be far off to become, at least economically, not so much dependent on the central assistance. For almost all major projects, we depend on the center for assistance. And that actually is a big challenge for the political leaders. Now that you have got a separate state, and Mizoram state has got abundant resources for development, and our political leaders need to focus more effectively and in a dynamic manner, and try to bring in a path of or a strategy of development so that we can generate our own resources. For everything, we should not look at Delhi, because Mizo people are very proud people. They have got a sense of self-pride. I'm talking just like a half Mizo though. A sense of pride is, why should we look at Delhi always? For every single penny we need for our economic development. That dependence has to be delinked by focusing on a strategy of development that would make optimum use of the resources available in the state. There is no dearth of resources. Now, the manpower, technical manpower is also, there is no dearth, because Mizoram University is the institution which can produce the kind of technical manpower that is required for the development of the state. In the past 20 years, we have been trying to contribute to the intellectual growth of the Mizo society. And now we have got almost all disciplines in our Mizoram University, and we can make use, we can tap that resource. Our young engineers produced from the School of Engineering Technology, our young scientists, environmentalists, our young economists, our young political scientists, sociologists, we have got everybody. And we are not getting these resources utilized because of lack of opportunities. And it is for the political leaders to create that opportunity. It is for the intellectuals to create that opportunity and help the states to grow and become independent economically, so that it can be a model. In the beginning, Mizoram was a model of peace. Now Mizoram can become a model of economic development. That is the need of the hour. I'm not going to speak more. I stop over here, and I thank Professor Pati for at least snatching the opportunity to celebrate this Mizoram Day, which rather helps us to think. There are very few number of participants. I'm really surprised why there is so small number of participants. We could have done a lot of advertising at least, so that our own Mizo boys and girls, our own students, our teachers and Mizo students should have sat and discussed today, because today is the day of introspection. Today is the day of thinking about how to go about. We achieved something, and what are we going to achieve? Those things are, for that you need a kind of forum, and today is the forum. And I'm looking forward to my two distinguished colleagues, how they are going to present. And I thank all of you. There are only 11 participants, including myself. All right, let us see how this discussion goes. Thank you very much.
Sir, actually, before thanking you for your kind speech, let me inform this is a little bit tricky question. This time, we didn't go for registered participation. Our participants by clicking the link only. We are having three types of participation here. Panelists, all of us. Then people who are clicking right now, they are watching live. Then YouTube live for world audience. And third thing will be the YouTube recording, which will be available immediately hereafter. So for this reason, there are so many, and I get information, so many are there, but not by registration. This time, because of exam, many other things, and the activities in ICT, we decided not to go for registered participation. Otherwise, there are
Fair
many
enough,
people, sir.
Fair enough, but
Yes,
you
sir.
know,
Yes,
the
sir.
number is very less.
This is the reason.
Today is very
Many are
important
there,
day. Our
Yes,
Mizo
sir.
students, Mizo intellectuals should know today
Yes, sir.
is going to be an important day for us.
Yeah, you are right. You are right.
Because
So many are there. You are right. So many are there. But actually, the registration part is missing here, and we are having live audience. Then there will be recording, and there will be many more. Yes.
all
sir.
right, all right, all
So,
right. Yeah.
okay. So on behalf of the team, I just want to say one sentence. Our guest of honor, Professor J.K. Patnaik, discussed from political development of statehood to development dynamics of today and tomorrow. So with these few words, let me now invite Professor Lalin Turanga, the first guest speaker who talk about formation of Mizoram state and beyond. Professor Lalin Turanga, please.
Chairman, Professor Srimas Pati, thank you for inviting me. And today, due to time constraint, I will share only skeleton informations. And I, in absentia, express to our Honorable Vice Chancellor here at Simbarao for encouraging this kind of program, and also to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Jagdish Patnaik. Thank you very much. And as I've just stated, due to time constraint, though I have prepared myself to give a lecture or to speak on the topics, that is formation of Mizoram state and beyond, for around 1 hour, but I have to slice it down. I have to reduce my sentences to be spoken out. Therefore, I will try my best to give a brief lecture on the topics. At the outset, I'd like to introduce the geographical location of Mizoram. Mizoram is a tongue-shaped hilly region located in the extreme southernmost corner of northeast India, covering an area of 21,087 square kilometers. The original area occupied by the Mizo tribes was much bigger than this, but this is the size of the area where the Mizo tribes are living after Indian independence. Mizoram lies between latitude degree 21.57 north to 24.31 north latitude, then and longitude degree 92.16 E to 93.26 E. The topic of concern runs through the heart of Mizoram at a place called Mabuang. In the original literature, it was written that the topic of concern runs through the heart of Mizoram at a place called Tenzol, but this has been revised by the Geographical Society. That is where the most reliable information is Mabuong. Then the topography of Mizoram consists of six parallel hill ranges, which runs mostly from north to south, enclosing between them deep river valleys. And the southern mountain ranges joined Arakan, Yamuna, or Burma. Now, as we have seen with our own eyes, almost the entire area of Mizoram is covered with a rectangle of tropical evergreen forest. The types of forest found in Mizoram are the tropical wet evergreen forest, then the tropical semi-evergreen forest, and the montane subtropical forest. Mizoram enjoys a pleasant climate, which is neither too hot nor too cold throughout the year. And that is why Lewin, a British official, was once here in Mizoram said, "The Mizos occupy a country of wood and dale, having an almost Italian climate." Mizoram was formerly called the Lusai Hills, and it was also known as the Lusai Hills, which means the land of the Lusai or Lusai. In fact, there is no any word Lusai in the Mizo language. Therefore, this is a corrupt spelling of Lusai. But even if we are going to accept Lusai or Lusai as the origin of the name of Mizoram, it cannot represent its present name, because Lusai or Lusai constitute only one of the many tribes under the term Mizo. And therefore, the name of the Lusai Hill district was changed to Mizo district under the Lusai Hills district Change of Name Act 1954. Subsequently, when the Mizo district was elevated to a union territory status on January 21, 1972, the land has officially been called Mizoram. And regarding its boundaries, Mizoram is bounded by in the east by Burma, and on the west by Bangladesh. And it is also bounded by Manipur and Kachar in the north, and by Tripura in the northwest. 3/4 of its boundaries are international, having a common open doors with Bangladesh over the length of 318 kilometers, and with Myanmar another 404 kilometers. Before the coming of the British, Mizoram was not known to the outside world. In other words, until the coming of the British to the then Lusai Hills, Mizoram was terra incognita to the rest of India. And it was like an untrodden land. And those days, the Mizos were living in scattered villages, having their respective chiefs, but the villages were not coordinated because there was no mechanism for coordinating relations between and among the different villages. Therefore, the chiefs of every village was independent from the other chiefs. And since there was no any coordination among the village chiefs, even after the coming of the British government faced so many problems in order to build relations with the traditional Mizo chiefs. And the Mizo chiefs used to do hunting, and they went as far as the present Kachar area of Assam. And in the meanwhile, the British administration was extending their tea gardens towards the foothills. That irritated the Teso Mizo chiefs and their tribal warriors. Then, on seeing the ongoing extension of the tea garden towards the foothills, the Mizo chiefs and their people started going against the extension of the tea garden towards the foothills. Therefore, the British government, whether it's like it or not, had to make an inroads into the Tendusai Hills. Well, they occupied the plain areas of Assam with economic motive. The British administration seems to be very much well aware about the absence of assets or wealth in the Tendusai Hills. That is why the British government, though reluctant to annex the Tendusai Hills, had to annex the Tendusai Hills in order to control the mobility or movement of the traditional chiefs and their tribal warriors. Therefore, months after the annexation of the Kachar Plains by the British way back in 1833, the British regime had to annex the Tendusai Hills way back in 1890. And let me tell you, this annexation of the Tendusai Hills was necessary because the Mizo chiefs and their hunters went as far as Monirkal and other areas, and that had led to the killing of one British tea garden manager. And his daughter was taken as a captive by Benko and his subjects, and that compelled the British regime to annex the Tendusai Hills. Now, after the annexation of the Tendusai Hills by the British administration in the Tendusai Hills continued the traditional system of governance for ruling over the common masses. Therefore, instead of abolishing the institution of chieftainship, it allows the continuation of the institution of chieftainship because the British government of the time did not like to incur heavy expenditure for the administration in the Tendusai Hills. Therefore, they followed the policy of indirect rule, and the principle was least interference, and as long as the chiefs were able to maintain law and order in their respective places, the British administration was happy. Now, with the passage of time, the common masses started learning more and more things. And during the Second World War, 2,130 Mizos were enrolled by the British regime to support the British fight for his survival at the international arena. And at the same time, the British administration encouraged the Mizo commoners to broaden their outlook. And in the meanwhile, the missionaries of Western origin came to the Tendusai Hills and introduced liberal education as a part of their proselytizing process. After some time, there were students who had graduated class 3, and the British administration gave carte blanche to the Christian missionaries to mold and shape the life of the Mizos. Therefore, among these newly educated persons came the Mizo intelligentsia. And after the means this indicates that there were two factors, which was developing political consciousness among the Mizos. The first one was Western education, liberal education, and another was the involvement of the Mizo youths in the Second World War. And those who participated in the Second World War, when they came back to their own land, did not like the continuity of their traditional institution of chieftainship. Even within their land, the newly political conscious Mizos did not like the continuation of the institution of chieftainship, and instead, they wanted to abolish the institution of chieftainship. Therefore, the newly political conscious Mizos approached the Lusail superintendent of that time to allow them to take part in the provincial politics of Assam. But the superintendent did not allow them. And way back in 1923 to 24, Telela Ralte and his friend Zongboy approached the superintendent to allow them to take part in the provincial government of Assam. Then they were declined because the Mizos were not given the freedom to participate in the provincial politics and government of Assam. Instead, the British administration enforced the government of India 1919, which recommended provincial autonomy, and the government of India 1935 excluded the Mizos. In other words, the Sahil was excluded from the operation of the provincial politics and government of Assam, which was introduced by the instruments of the government of India 1919, because this act suggests provincial autonomy. Whereas other tribals in Northeast India, like Meghalayas, were allowed to participate in the provincial politics because Meghalaya was declared partially excluded areas. Therefore, there was some kind of discontent in the minds of the Mizos. Let me cut it short like this. And even after Indian independence, though the Mizos were given the district council status based on the recommendations of the Patrol subcommittee, which was set up by the Constituent Assembly, the Mizos were not happy with the achievement meted out to them. And the district councillors were not happy, though they were their party was an affiliate of the Assam Pradesh Congress Committee of that time. Therefore, way back in 1959, there was an apprehension that mountain famine was about to occur. And the district councillor approached the state government, telling them that mountain famine is about to occur in the near future. But they could not convince the state government. And some of the representatives of the district authorities also said that they were sarcastically treated by some of their ministers, because they raised the questions asking them that whether they were the article scientists or not. Therefore, there was this discontent in the minds of the Mizos. Then In the meanwhile, there was a national famine front formed by some political-minded Mizos, which earned a good name in course of the aviation program. In the what these Mizo National Famine Front had a good name, and the youth of the Mizo National Famine Front collected foodstuff and distributed to the needy families. Therefore, within no time, the Mizo National Famine Front had a good name. Then when the famine was over, way back in 1961, the famine front was converted into a political party called Mizo National Front. And though the Mizo National Famine Front at the beginning said that it would boost its political demands through non-violence, but there was a disturbance breaking out on the first day of March 1966. And since that time, there was political turmoil in the Dendusa Hills. And the whole of Dendusa Hills was declared insurgency area. And let me cut it short like this, otherwise I'm going to take too much time. Life was not free, and night curfew was imposed, and the government imposed different kind of restrictions. Therefore, the people of Mizoram was under suffering. And with the passage of time, there were positive moves for the establishment of peace in the Dendusa Hills. And Brigadier Tisailan, who was an Indian Army officer after his retirement, was invited to come to Mizoram in order to see the plight of the innocent masses, because many villages were grouped and life was very uncertain. Then afterwards, insurgency as said by many authors was a little bit cooling down. Then in 1976, there was a meaningful dialogue taking place in Assam, and that was the first time there was a concrete move for establishing peace in the Mizo Hills. But the peace accord or understanding signed by the eminent Supremo Pulau Denga and the representatives of government of India could not be translated into a reality. Then the people of Mizoram had to go back to the insurgency atmosphere, and therefore there was no hope for the return of peace. And in 1972, the Dendusa Hills was elevated to union territory status, and by that time, the Mizo Union, the first political party, and Mizoram Pradesh Congress Committee was merged, and the Mizo Union sacrificed its identity for the cost of the people, we can also live in this way. Then Mizoram was elected the first chief minister of the Union Territory. Then since that time, the political executives were trying hard for the restoration of peace in the Tembusai Hills, and in brief, they searched for the possibility of establishing peace in the Tembusai Hills. Then Pulau Denga was also invited to share the negotiating table with the Union government. Then, yes, as expected, Pulau Denga came back to New Delhi on March 7, 1986. Then the chief minister of that time, Pulau Thanhola, was also summoned to Delhi on June 2nd, 1986. And afterwards, the chief secretary, Pulau Khama, on June 4, 1986. Then Pulau Denga had meetings with Ram Niwas Mirda, the Union Minister of State for Home of that day, and R.V. Pradhan, the then Home Secretary of India. Then starting from the time of Mizoram as the Chief Minister, then Pulau Thanhola continued his peace mission. Then after meeting with those dignitaries and important figures by Pulau Denga, Pulau Denga also had meeting with the Central Congress leaders and finally with the Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi. And this was followed by the signing of the political settlement or agreement on June 25, 1986, between Pulau Denga and Arjun Singh, providing political interim arrangements between the MNF and the Congress. And this was the political agreement signed. And this was finally followed by the signing of the Mizoram Peace Accord on June 30, 1986, between the Union Home Secretary, R.V. Pradhan, Pulau Denga, MNF Supremo, and Pulau Khama, Chief Secretary of Mizoram. Then Mizoram Peace Accord provided, among other things, full statehood for Mizoram with 40 members Legislative Assembly. Mizoram state was inaugurated by the then Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, on 20th February 1986. That is why we are now celebrating Mizoram State Day. The significance of this Mizoram Peace Accord, among other things, the importance of the Mizoram Peace Accord is that the Peace Accord contained the provisions for the establishment of High Court for Mizoram and a separate university. These were clearly written in the Peace Accord. Now, what we have to remember is that the sacrifice made by the then government, People's Representatives Government, this type of sacrifice had never been taken place in other parts of the world. And the government of that day stepped down in order to give accommodations to the MNF leaders. Then now, the government was run both by the MNF and the Congress, and the existing Chief Minister Puhola stepped down to be the Deputy Chief Minister, and Pulau Denga was the new Chief Minister. This was the arrangements made for the establishment of peace in Mizoram, and this was the situation where the people of Mizoram were after the signing of Mizoram Peace Accord, and this peace accord, signing of peace accord, was followed by the elevation of the Indian territory of Mizoram to a full-fledged state. And on February 20, 1987, Mizoram, the Union territory of Mizoram was elevated to a full-fledged state. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Alif Turanga. Thank you for enlightening all of us and the participants about Mizoram, the historical growth, political discussions, negotiations resulting in the formation of separate state of Mizoram. So we hope that we'll have more opportunity when we can discuss Mizoram's political development in detail, but because of, as you rightly told, pursuit of time, we have to restrict ourselves to a few minutes. So I thank on behalf of the entire team to you for your kind gesture and discussion. Our next guest speaker is Professor Margaret L. Pachau, Professor of English, Mizoram University. And as all of us know, Mizoram symbolizes culture in all its dimensions: dance, music, drama, color, dress, food habits. So this is a place where people are called singing birds of India, smiling people, angels. So from this land, we send the message of peace and development. With these few words, I have the pleasure of inviting Professor Margaret L. Pachau to speak on Mizoram, the cultural context. Professor Margaret, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Pathi, and a very good evening to all the distinguished participants. The topic that I'm going to speak upon is, as Professor Pathi has introduced, Mizoram, the cultural dynamics. And as we all know, the term culture comes under a very, very broad umbrella. So I'm going to first start, I'll be very brief, I'll be as brief as possible because of the paucity of time. And I'll just be very brief, and I will start first with the concept of Mizoram being, as we had already heard earlier, a state in Northeast India, and which is, and if you, if you break down the two words, the word Mizo signifies also the natives who are resident of Mizoram, and also Ram, which is in the Mizo language, it is called land. So technically it is, in very simplistic terms, land of the Mizos, or land of the Mizo, as some people would like to denote out over here. We've got as our neighbors, we've got, we have Assam, which is closest to us in terms of the Indian mainland. And then we've also got Bangladesh, and we've also got Myanmar as in terms of the international borders. Significantly also, I would like to point out that Mizoram basically is a highly literate state. We come now next only to Kerala, the state of Kerala. At last count, it was 91.33% in terms of the literacy factor, and also growing beyond that. And what is important for us to understand over here is that, we are a state which I think we all know, we are currently protected under the Indian Constitution as a scheduled tribe. And we've got, we've also got a very highly agrarian community. And in terms of the economy aspect also, we are a highly agrarian community. And I'm mentioning this because the concept of us being an agrarian community is something that is very reflective in terms of the culture. It's not because there has been, we've pushed ourselves because there's been a predominant green revolution, or because of, any other aspect that has been given to us by the center or anything of that sort, or incentives, but basically because even in the pre-colonial times also, the culture itself of Mizoram has been highly agrarian, and our folklore and our folk tales, our songs are reflective of the highly agrarian culture that Mizoram has always been. And also, interestingly, the concept of the Juming culture, or what other people would call as slash and burn culture, is something that has been there from time immemorial and continued till today. Of course, we know that it's not a very environmentally friendly, agrarian agricultural process, but nevertheless, it is something that has been there as a part of our culture. And this is something that I would like to point out at this point in time. We've got rivers, we've got hills, we've got a huge number of mountains, and so to that we are not. I'm not going to come about at this point in time. When going quickly to the aspect of the culture of the Mizo tribes, basically, when you talk about the culture of the Mizo tribes, it is important to understand over here that the concept of the post-modernity, and when we talk about the aspect of the postmodern, the concept of the post-colonial also comes into tandem in terms of the Mizo. So when you think of the postmodern existence and also what has happened over here for us as a state, we always have to look back in terms of the postmodern and also the post-colonial, because for Mizoram, as it is for, as we have different cultures across India, across the world, basically, we have to understand over here that the colonial influence has always been a very significant influence for Mizoram in terms of the cultural parameters. When we talk about the colonial influence, we're talking about the British administration. We're also talking about the British missionaries who came to Mizoram. And significantly, this whole aspect of the concept of literacy, the whole aspect of the concept of administration, the agrarian aspect also is something which is also very significantly interlinked to a postmodern tandem. And what I want to emphasize upon over here is that, we had very often, there is always the misconception that, because the colonials were here, that is, as they were in, the whole of what is now India, at that point in time, what happens was that, many people often mistakenly think that, because the white man was here, it was actually the white man who came and imparted a whole lot of things, especially in terms of things like, basic administration, and day-to-day affairs and things like that. But actually that is, when you actually look at the native history that is out over here, it's actually not that way at all. There was a very, very distinct kind of an administration out over here. And, the Professor Pathi and Professor Patnaik, who've been here as colleagues, and as Professor Patnaik has said, half Mizos basically, will also bear me out on this. Even today, in terms of, the administration that we have, like the YMA that we have, the local community setups that we have, the kind of disciplinary factors that we have also, the community, the bonding, everything was actually there even before the white man actually embarked upon, Lushai's soil at that point in time, because, it wasn't Mizoram at that point in time. So I'll just mention two very brief aspects of, the Mizo sensibility in the pre-colonial, which was being carried on now in the post-colonial. And one is called Natlang, and Natlang is actually something which is it's a spirit of united labor and also equal sharing. You have Natlang for in times of sorrow. You have Natlang in times of merriment also. So if somebody has if there's a landslide, for example, or if there's a wedding, and if some people have to pitch in, automatically the community goes on as what you call Natlang, or which is voluntary community work basically. So people are not paid for it, so that kind of a bonding is something that had existed even before the British ever set foot here on Lushai or Mizo soil. The other important thing is also the concept of, in the culture, is the aspect of Tlom Ngai Na. And Natlang and Tlongai. Now, these are two words which every Mizo and even non-Mizos basically have heard of. And Tlongai na, we often we say with pride that there's no English equivalent to that, to this particular word. Many cultures may have it, but the manner in which it is interpreted in the Mizo sensibility, you don't have that. So basically, it incorporates behavior which is self-sacrificing, self-denying, also doing what the occasion demands, and even risking your life for, and giving up your life also for the betterment of somebody else. So, these things which are there today as a part of, which are very integral as a part of Mizo culture, were there even before, in terms of the pre-colonial aspects also. We've got our traditional festivals. We've got one coming up on the 4th of March, basically, which is Saptar Kut, and it's basically the spring festival. So the word Kut, basically in Mizo, is a word which stands for festival. We had a lot of these festivals, Saptar Kut being the main one. We had Talfawang Kut, we have Meme Kut, we have Paul Kut also. So, a whole lot of this, but basically it's Saptar Kut, which is the, to celebrate the advent of the spring festival, which is most celebrated even till now. As for our dances, we've got a number of dances, but I think the one that most people are familiar with is called Tsero, and very wrongly interpreted as bamboo dance. We don't want it to be called bamboo dance because we use bamboos out over there, but it's actually a misconception out over there. But the word that we use is Tsero. So this is a dance that is done by men and women, and in fact, as a matter of pride, in the year 2010, we entered the Guinness Book of World Records also, where we had for 8 minutes 10,736 young men and women doing the Tsero, which was all across Aizawl town, city, which is the capital. So apart from this also, we've got a lot of other dances like Tseilam, we've got Kwallam, we've got Tsai, Solakya, bordering and ranging across the entire Mizoram. And of course, the concept of music, and as Professor Pathi has rightly maintained, a musical people. One of the missionaries, in fact, said that, Mizos are a singing people. And, sometimes that when the missionary had said this, many people, especially the Mizos, didn't like it because, it conveyed a sense of almost as if, it was very wrongly misinterpreted because, it was as if to say that we sang and we did nothing else. But the thing was that, for most Mizos, basically, in terms of the culture, most of us can actually hold a tune. We may not be, all of us may not be professional singers, but almost everyone knows how to sing. We can carry a tune, and most of us also know how to play music instruments. So music becomes a very significant song, becomes a very significant part of the Mizo existence. And also, as like many other aspects of the Mizo culture, we sing in times of sorrow. We also sing in times of merriment. If there is a death in a community, for 3 nights, there's a wake that is kept, and then people actually sing. And so this is in terms of, sharing your grief with the family which is in mourning. Then, of course, we also sing in times of merriment. So this happens in times of, say, Christmas, for that matter, the Christmas carols. And of course, we've got a whole host of activities. The state government and other NGOs also often have these whole host of activities where you've got, talent hunts. And in the talent hunts, most of the talent that is displayed is actually in terms of the singing aspect and also playing musical instruments. So in that way, yes, right, I guess we are a people who do love to sing. And in terms of the musical instruments also, a musical instrument which has been there from time immemorial as far as the Mizo tradition is concerned is the drum. And in Mizo we call it Kwang. And the Mizo drum obviously is something which is very different from the Western drum. And so in the church, for example, you will actually find the Mizo drums. We've got 2. One is the, the smaller drum, and then, one is the bigger drum. So we call them Kwang Dian and Kwang Te, which basically translates to the bigger drum and the smaller drum. So we have this, and this is some, and even after, the Western musical instruments have come in, with a whole lot of, music schools also springing up and mushrooming around to teach both the Western and also the local, the native instruments. The kwang, or the drum, is something which has been there as a part of Mizo cultural sensibility. In terms of the language, Mizo is the official language of Mizoram, and along with English. And we have the people are called Mizo, and of course the language is also called Mizo. In the university, in fact, we've got a department of Mizo, and Professor Kyangte, who was the founding faculty of founder faculty of the department, in fact, still proudly says that the department of Mizo is actually the only postgraduate department of Mizo in the entire world. And actually that is a very, very truthful statement, because you don't have that in any part of the world. And in terms of Mizo literature also, we've got a whole lot of people who've been writing, and the narratives especially. We've got translators, we've got writers of short stories, we've got, and in writing also, the aspect of song composition comes in. And we've got the Mizo Academy of Letters, which is actually a very active body. And we've got a whole host of, people. In fact, we've got 28 Padma Shris from the state, and a majority of them have received their Padma awards from the department of, from under literature, the category of literature and education. And then after that, social work also comes in. In fact, in the university, again at the Department of English, we've got two faculty, Professor Kyangte and Professor R.L. Kanmoya, who are actually Padma awardees. In the year 2007, incidentally, we had a Padma Bhushan awardee who was Captain LZ Silo, and he also incidentally is a writer. So I'm bringing this in to also denote that in terms of Mizo literature, basically, there's been this huge umbrella where it's not only regional or statewide recognition, but also as a nationwide recognition, you actually have all this. As for the food, we are predominantly non-vegetarians. We've got rice as staple, and then we've got this, and there's this one particular term which is called bai, and bai is like a huge mishmash of vegetables, and it's done there with fermented beans, fermented pork, and this happens to be a staple also in almost every household. Now, quickly, this in a nutshell basically becomes representative of the culture that is there. I want to just briefly end with the kind of scenario that we have out over here, the kind, and culture being a very, very significant changing dynamics also out over here. What I want to basically quickly say is that, because the earlier my fellow panelists had spoken about, the past, the youth of today are actually much more in terms of the culture also. We are, what I have noticed out over here is that not only the youth in the university, but the youth at large, they've become much more all embracing. And there is to a whole lot of things. There is this wide acceptance also, and in terms of, say, entrepreneurship, and the state governments, whichever state government has been in place, has been promoting to their a great extent entrepreneurship, and also an awareness towards, say, things like competitive exams, holding on to, say, coaching classes also, which the youth are largely coming to align with basically. And interestingly also, what I must say over here is that, there is this marked awareness about the cultures of the mainland. Like, for example, say a language like Hindi, for that matter. You might not have too many people enrolling for, say, Hindi in college or the university, but spoken Hindi, yes, is actually something which has, which has gained so much of a recognition, and people are actually looking onto it more, as a language which they can actually be a part of, rather than, thinking that it's only people from, say, mainland India also who ought to be just speaking that particular language. And English also, which they always used to look upon with, which they wanted to learn, but actually would look upon with let's say, an element of awe. You have more and more people embracing the language also. Also, the influence of, say, the South Asian countries, especially Korea, China, Japan, in terms of the cultures, basically. These are the things which have largely shaped the sensibility of, say, the youth. And what I must say over here is that, when Homi K. Bhabha spoke about the aspect of hybridity, where he in his way, because Homi K. Bhabha, in the location of culture, and when we do culture studies, Homi Bhabha's statement about the aspect of hybridity becomes very important, because when we speak about Mizoram, especially young, nascent as it is, the dynamics of the culture become so important, because we understand that Homi Bhabha's aspect of hybridity comes into focus over here. You don't lose your own culture, but you start embracing it. And I would also like to end by quoting Michel Foucault, who spoke about the concept of power, and where he said that power comes from everywhere because it is everywhere. So that hybridity of Bhabha's, coupled with Michel Foucault's concept of power, I think is where Mizoram's cultural sensibility is very much located in today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Margaret. So let me have the honor of informing that our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K.R. Sambasiv Rao, today's chief guest, has just joined. So I will call upon him to talk. But before that, only one or two words about Professor Margaret's speech. She was talking about the ethos of Mizo culture, Lang Moina, that others before self. The nearest English could be that people of Mizoram think others before they think about themselves. And what about culture? She talked about the mosaic of Mizoram cultural dynamics, in which it is the only state, it happens only in India, that on Hindi Day, someone whose mother tongue is Mizo speaks in English and quotes Kishore Kumar number in Bengali and Bhupen Hazarika number in Assamese. This is Mizoram culture. So I thank Professor Margaret. We'll have more opportunities when we can discuss more about culture and things of cultural dynamics. Now, with pleasure, I invite Professor K.R. Sambasiv Rao Garu, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, today's chief guest. Sir, please speak a few words. Thank you so much for joining, in spite of busy schedule, sir.
Good afternoon, Professor Srinivas Bhatti, sir. I and all other members, speakers of the day, Professor Margaret Pachavo and Professor Rintulanga, and also the participants of the Ek Bharat State Bharat program and the celebration of Mizoram's Day, and on the occasion of Mizoram's Day. I congratulate all of you for organizing this event, because I'm joining in mobile. I don't know how clarity it was, but it was a great opportunity for me to say a few words about the Mizoram's Day. Mizoram is a place where I have been working with Mizoram University for the past 4 years, more than 4 years, and I have gone through the various beautiful things which happened during my tenure in Mizoram, and I come across with the culture of Mizo people, and I come across the administrative discipline, and also the social discipline, and also the cordial relations with outsiders, and the reception and hospitality of Mizo people during my tenure, and I come across with all the kinds of good things about Mizoram. I have no negative things to say on this occasion, but Mizo culture is one of the culture actually everybody I use today also when I'm in Central University of Andhra Pradesh, where in a meeting I was mentioning, I got an opportunity that to mention on some occasion to say a few words about Mizoram. Mizo culture is one unique culture which everybody in the whole country has to learn. The behavior of the people and the receptibility of the people, and also the Mizos, how they give the reception to the people who are coming to Mizoram, and how they had the kind of discipline they had, it should be known to whole country, and the whole country should also even follow that kind of reception which they offer to outsiders. This is what I have been mentioning on some occasion with the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Central University Andhra Pradesh and the other members who participated in that meeting. It was actually a memorable experience for me. In the past 4 years, I had been received the various things which actual experiences which I had in Mizoram. It is very worth mentioning, and even how during the COVID situation, how the people has very disciplinedly controlled the very pandemic situation, and also how the difficult conditions has been handled very nicely by the government of Mizoram, and how it has been actually this various measures they have taken for control of COVID is also very wonderful, and people has to understand how Mizos are actually been very disciplined in controlling the social pandemic situation. This is one of the points actually we highlighted during our the model COVID control mechanism which adopted by the Mizoram state to whole country. We organized a beautiful webinar also on some occasion, and the traditional culture actually which they had in Mizoram, it is actually need to be known to many people, and how the reforms, how in the election system, and even the public policy system which actually been adopted by the Mizo people need to be known to whole country. Because I was mentioning today to my colleagues in the meeting at Central University of Andhra Pradesh. I was telling that the on same dais, the all the political leaders will assemble, and they will canvass without any mic and without any other things. They simply assemble at one platform and they speak about what they are going to do for Mizoram. This is the culture actually we need to cultivate to whole country. Whereas in other places you see crores of money has been spent for election in the MLA and MP elections, but whereas in Mizoram, not even 5 lakhs has been spent for elections. I was mentioning to my colleagues here. This is one of the beautiful culture actually we need to cultivate to all the people. And I really enjoyed my tenure in Mizoram University with the beautiful hospitality and culture which has been experienced by me in the last few years. And I was really happy to be here. And I thank all the people, Mizos, who really come across in my life, which I spent there in Mizoram, for their wonderful support and help to the Mizoram University development. And I remember and cherish my memories forever in my life. Thank you very much, Professor Pati, and other members for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. So we are very happy that Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Rao could make time in spite of busy schedule, and could speak few words about Mizoram, the Mizo people and Mizo culture. Sir, actually we are coming to end of this meeting. Today we had very good discussion. Professor J.K. Patnaik, Honorable PVC, he spoke.
Actually, if you don't give message, I'm not really knowing I don't remember the time. And after seeing your message only, I could able to understand that I missed this occasion.
Okay, sir. So, Professor J.K.
Thank you for your
Patnaik,
reminder. No, I forgot totally. I was sitting with my colleague, Vice Chancellor, Professor Kori sir is here. So I just took his permission and I spoke few minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
So I did not know that Professor Patnaik is also there. I'm sorry that I could not mention his name, and I could not mention Margaret Pachao's name. I mentioned Margaret Madam name.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, he filled in the gap when you were not there. We were busy.
Yes, sir.
Patnaik talked about the Mizoram political development.
He is the right person. I'm not the right person. No, he is the right person.
Sir. It's okay. All the right persons are here because you're celebrating a state which has a very special place in the country and in the cultural map of the country.
But my dream of Mizoram is not been fulfilled by Margaret Pachao or any other English faculty or Mizo people, that I wanted to develop an interface platform between Mizo language and Hindi language. That is not been developed by anyone. I always tell that all the Mizo people that you are not doing well. Mizo department people and also the English department people in our Mizoram University, that my dream has not been fulfilled so far. So before I go, whether they do it or not, I don't know about that. So that platform, common platform,
we'll try, sir.
Actually,
we'll try, sir. We'll try. Your suggestion is well taken. We'll try, sir. So on behalf of the organizers, the teams of Ek Bharat Shresh Bharat of Mizoram University and Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Motihari, Bihar, my Vice Chancellor, Professor K.R.S. Ambaswara Garu, Professor J.K. Patnaik, Honorable PVC, Professor Lalin Truanga, Professor Margaret Pachau, all my colleagues in Ek Bar Sabse team here and in Motihari, Bihar, particularly Professor Rafiqul Islam, my counterpart in Motihari, all the participants. I just have to say a big thank you. I am grateful to all of you.
I'm
that
also
today-
sorry to mention about the Motihari University, Rafiqullah Alam and other members of the Motihari University. I did not mention in my speech.
No, sir, they know, sir. They know it.
Uh,
They know it.
I
They know
forgot,
that you
sorry
are busy.
for that.
You
Sorry.
know, we have regular contact. We have many programs in line. So Minister of Education has given a timeline from 25th of this month to 15th of March. We'll have many programs. Again, we will discuss and we can finalize. We have more occasion of interacting with each other. And let me have a very small announcement. We conducted one inter-university essay, India at 75. We got so many essays. And now, tomorrow, maybe on Monday, we are going to finalize the names. And I'm happy to announce that both the universities, the students, research scholars have done wonderfully well. And the names are there. We are finalizing. We'll notify in our website and give copy to Motihari friends. So this is a little bit surprise for the students and participants. Let it be there for 2-3 days more. So at the end, I say a big thank you to all of you. Namaste, Jai Hind.